Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and a very good morning to the respected panels. My name is Zulhairy bin Hazrul Azami, representing BTMM and University Technical Malaysia Melaka. I want to start by asking you to imagine an invisible wall. On one side of this wall is a brilliant multi-million dollar entertainment product, a video game steeped in ancient Chinese mythology, Taoist philosophy and martial arts history. On the other side is a global consumer who has never heard of any of these things. Traditionally, that wall, the barrier of cultural unfamiliarity, stops the consumer from ever buying the product. But what if you could break down that wall without making the consumer read a single page of the history? What if you could speak a universal language? Today, I will present my research on exactly how the global gaming industry is doing this. Welcome to my final year project presentation, which is Visual Technology as a Cultural Bridge, the impact of high-fidelity graphics on consumer adoption of Chinese Wuxia games. So, over the next around 15 minutes, I will guide you through the complete architecture of my research. We will begin by establishing the industry background and the specific problem game developers face from today. From there, I will highlight the critical gap in current literature, detail my research objective, and walk you through the conceptual framework. Finally, we will discuss my methodology, including a highly specific visual education technique, and conclude with the expected contribution of this study to the high-tech marketing field. Okay, so for the first topic, which is the introduction, let us first define the challenge, the internationalization of culturally dense software. Specifically, the Chinese Wuxia genre naturally face what we call the liability of foreigners. This is the inherent disadvantage a product faces in a foreign market because consumers simply do not resonate with the unfamiliar law. Okay, so let me ask you guys, you can see the image on the left, which is the liability of foreigners. Do you understand what is the meaning behind the image? No, right? So let me tell you, this is the Chinese mythology image. So you can see the Sun Wukong there, Erlangshen and Neza. So without me telling you or without you watching the movie, you probably wouldn't even understand the meaning or the story, the lore behind the mythology or behind the image. Is it? So, however, global developers are fundamentally shifting their market approach to bypass this. Instead of trying to explain the complex story like I did just now, they are adopting a visual-first strategy. They are using cutting-edge tech like Unreal Engine 5, ray tracing, and photorealism as a non-verbal cultural bridge. As you can see on the right, which is the cultural bridge, Black Myth Wukong, Where Winds Meet, the games that I'm showing you right now, which is the game that teach you about the lore, about the culture of the Chinese mythology. So without you needing to read about the mythology, you play the game, whereas you are the character and then you will face or you will experience the mythology within the game. So that is what the company are doing right now. So the prime target for this strategy is the Malaysian Gen Z gamers. This demographic is entirely unique. They are hyper-connected digital natives who actively seek out software specifically to benchmark and push their high-performance hardware to the absolute limit. Okay. So for the background of the study, to truly understand this, we must look at the current state of the global video game industry. On the left is the industry expansion. The AAA market has become saturated. To continue expanding, developers are aggressively exporting heavily localized, culturally dense genres to global audience, but the barrier is immediate. An unfamiliar history and complex mythology create a natural consumer hesitations. If a player doesn't understand the world, maybe they won't buy the game. As you can see, the example I give here for the AAA industry is Sega, EA Sport and Rockstar. Rockstar did the game called GTA, right? EA Sports such as FIFA and etc. Okay, so how does high-tech marketing solve this? By pivoting the entire promotional focus, marketers are no longer selling the story, but they are selling the technology itself. They prioritize cutting-edge graphical showcase over traditional narrative exposition. They know that while a Malaysian gamer might not understand a 16th century Chinese dynasty or mythology, they do understand stunning 4K graphics and particle effects and flawless environmental physics that make them interested to buy or even play the game. Okay, so lastly, it's about the high-tech marketing solutions, which is, like I said just now, they prioritize cutting-edge graphics to showcase over the traditional narrative exposition. Alright, let's move to the next topic, which is the problem statement, which is the core unknown. This brings us directly to the core problem of this study. We know the challenge, right? Culturally distinct genres face steep internationally adoption barriers. We know the strategy, which is the marketers are using 4K visual spectacle to attract gamers who want to test their expensive PC hardware. But here's the unknown. We do not actually know how players internalize this visual marketing. Despite the massive commercial success of visually stunning titles like Black Myth Wukong and Where We Meet, there is a severe lack of qualitative understanding of the consumer psychological process. Does sheer graphic quality possess enough cognitive weight to ultimately convince a consumer or a gamer to completely ignore the cultural unfamiliarity? We see the sale numbers, but we do not understand the human perception driving those numbers. So, to answer that question, I prepare you a research gap. We have to look at where the existing research falls short. Current studies rely heavily on quantitative data. For example, Zhang et al. In 2025 utilized big data scraping from YouTube sentiment analysis. Other studies focus primarily on utilitarian spending, gaming addiction, or isolated metrics like electronic word of mouth. Geographically, research has focused broadly on global or Western markets, lacking a localized Southern Asian perspective. So, this study provides the solution to that particular gap. Instead of scraping data, my methodology employs a qualitative multiple case study using in-depth interview like visual elicitations. Instead of looking at gaming addictions, I am focusing strictly on the psychological impact of high-fidelity visual aesthetics, and instead of broad global view, this study is highly localized to Malaysian Gen Z high-end PC gamers, navigating a multicultural digital economy right here at Kuala Lumpur. Therefore, my research is guided by three specific objectives. First, to explore how Malaysian Gen Z gamers perceive the role of high-fidelity graphics when they encounter a culturally unfamiliar AAA game. Second, to understand the exact way in which visual-first digital marketing materials like uncompressed 4K trailers influence their willingness to engage with niche or unfamiliar or like Wuxia lore. Yes. So third one is to identify the specific graphical elements. Is it the photorealism, the physics, the lighting, or the mechanic of the game that gamers feel most effectively will bridge the cultural gap? Alright, so to prove or to ensure the data I give to you just now is highly accurate, the scope of this study is tightly controlled. My target audience is Malaysian Gen Z gamers, which is our hyper-connected digital native. But more importantly, the hardware context is restricted to high-performance hardware users. I am looking specifically at individuals who own high-end PCs, modern consoles, or a flagship gaming smartphone, because these are the users that are capable of using and rendering the AAA graphic that I'm studying right now. So, the methodology approach is strictly qualitative, utilizing in-depth, semi-structured interview localized entirely within Kuala Lumpur. Alright, now hold on. I want you to draw attention to my data collection, which is the strongest part of my methodology, which is the visual elicitations. If I simply ask a gamer to remember how they felt when they saw a game trailer 2 weeks ago, the data is flawed by memory bias. To fix this, I am physically presenting uncompressed 4K gameplay trailers of games like Black Myth Wukong to the respondent during the interview, so like they will see by themselves how exactly and what I'm telling them about the lore, about the gameplay, about the mechanics of the game, so that they understand it. Alright?
Some of the stuff. That's it. I won't hold back from now. Let's fight!
Alright. Have you watched the video? Is it interesting? Alright. So, moving to the next part, which is the literature review. This research is anchored by three critical theoretical concepts. First is the Adapted Technology Acceptance Model, which is TAM. Traditional TAM mentions utilitarian things like usefulness and efficiency, but gaming is a different thing. For hedonic software, visual enjoyment and sensory immersions are the actual driver of consumer acceptance. Second is the halo effect. Literature shows that high aesthetic quality subconsciously elevates the user's psychological evaluation of the entire games. If it looks incredible, the brain assume that the story is incredible too. Number 3 is the visual translation. In high-tech marketing, photorealism acts as a language-independent tool that successfully bypass the liability of foreigners that we discussed earlier just now. So, from what we discussed from just now, this brings us to my conceptual framework system map. You can see the flow clearly. On the top left, we have our inputs, Unreal Engine 5, ray tracing and 4K trailers. On the right, our context is the Malaysian Gen Z high-end PC owners. This funnel into our core subject, which is the AAA Chinese Wuxia games. This subject processed through our theoretical foundation, which is the Adapted TAM, focusing on perceived visual enjoyment. This creates the central conflict of the study. On the green side, we have our driver of adoption, high-fidelity visual aesthetic and hardware performance motivations. On the red side, we have the liability of foreigners, unfamiliar history and complex mythology. Ultimately, these flow into our dependent variable, which is consumer perception and adoption intention. This framework measures how effectively the green drivers overpower the red barriers to create a willingness to engage with the product. Moving to the next part, which is the research methodology. To execute this framework I showed you just now, my methodology is built on an interpretivism philosophy, using a qualitative approach because aesthetic perception is highly subjective. The design is both descriptive and exploratory. The strategy utilizes a multiple case study format with purposive sampling to guarantee I am only interviewing high-end hardware users. Finally, the time horizon for this study is cross-sectional, capturing consumer sentiment as it exists in today's rapidly changing tech development. So, the time has been jealous to me. What I can do now is to conclude the impact of this study extend, which is it extends in two directions, academically and for the industry. For academically, it expands to the technology acceptance model for hedonic, aesthetic-based software, proving that in digital entertainment, visual fidelity is a measurable metric of adoption. So, for the industry, it proves a strategic high-tech marketing blueprint. It proves the developers that they do not need to spend millions localizing and translating every piece of the cultural lore. Instead, by utilizing high-fidelity visual benchmark, they can successfully launch a culturally niche product on a global scale. High-fidelity graphics now are no longer just rendering techniques. They are now the new universal translator. So, that's all from me. Thank you very much for your time today. I now welcome any question or feedback from the panel. That's all from me. Thank you.